After I found out that my husband had a mistress, I divorced him without hesitation. I moved back to my mother's home with my daughter. My mother's house was very big. It's a villa big enough to accommodate me and my daughter. I had thought that my family would comfort me and even help me fight back when they saw me being bullied, but I was wrong. After divorce, I took my daughter back to my parents' home. My sister-in-law blocked me and my daughter outside the door. When my sister-in-law saw me coming back for the first sight, she was smiling. "Welcome back. Why didn't you tell me earlier so I could go buy groceries?" The next second, her expression changed when she saw that I had several large boxes. "Nancy, why are you carrying so many boxes?" I took my daughter Annie and sat her down on the sofa. Karen, Tom, Bill, and I are divorced. So I'm moving back here to live for a few days. Don't worry, I'm just staying here for a few days. I'll find a house and move out soon. She suddenly raised her voice. "What? You're divorced and you want to move back home?" "Yes, Karen. There are still many spared rooms at home. Annie and I just stay here temporarily. Is that okay?" She didn't respond, nor did she mention buying groceries and cooking. She immediately went back to her room. After a while, I put all my luggage into the empty room where I usually stayed and settled Annie down. Mom came back in a hurry. I guess Karen called her. I saw her anxious and felt a little sorry for her. She must be very sad to know that I was divorced. So I didn't call them. At first, I thought it would be better to tell them in person. "Nancy, are you really divorced from Tom?" "Yes, Mom. He..." Before I could finish my words, my mother was spinning around the room emotionally. "How can you get a divorce? How can you get a divorce? Who is Tom? He is such a capable and rich man. How can you find such another man after you divorce him?" I felt very upset after my mother came back. She didn't say a single word to comfort me. Instead, she spoke well of the cheating scumbag. "Mom, don't you ask me why I'm getting divorced." She was stunned. "Why?" Tears fell from my eyes as I recalled the anger and grievance I felt when I found out that Tom was cheating on me. "Mom, Tom cheated on me. He used our money to support a mistress." I thought my mother would comfort me and curse Tom, but I didn't expect that. She just said casually, "I thought it was a big deal, just a mistress. It's too common in society nowadays. Even poor men want to have concubines, let alone a man as successful as Tom. Nancy, you are just too stubborn. You can just turn a blind eye and let it go. Listen to me. Go back and apologize to Tom and remarry him. It'll be all okay and you two can continue to live your life well." I couldn't believe that this was what my mom could say. She was my biological mother. Her daughter suffered such a great injustice, but she didn't even try to comfort me nor help me fight back. Instead, she asked me to compromise and apologize. I was so sad that I stopped talking to her. I fell on the bed and fell asleep. When I woke up, it was already night. My daughter also fell asleep next to me without even a blanket covering her. I quickly covered her with a blanket and got up to look for something to eat. As soon as I reached the door, I heard people talking in the living room. "Did she really divorce Tom?" Karen asked. "Yes," I asked Tom. My big brother Tim replied. Tom said that she was too strong all day long and that he was just playing an act. But she insisted that he was cheating on her and wanted a divorce. "She has been like this since she was a child. She never bows her head. It's time for her to," Mother said. Mom. "Tom said that as long as we convince Nancy to remarry him, he will not care what had happened. He will even give us some money and let me continue to work at the Bill Group and give me a promotion." "Really?" Karen was very happy. "Yes. Tom has taken good care of our family. How can Nancy find such a good person again?" I didn't expect this. They are my family, the people I have always been helping for the sake of profit. They didn't care about my feelings at all and may even betray me. I closed the door gently and walked over to seat myself opposite. The four people all looked at me. "So everyone is here. What are you talking about?" I casually picked up a banana first. My brother said, "Nancy, Tom called me and said that as long as you are willing to apologize and admit your mistakes, he will forgive you." "Tim, he cheated on me, but you asked me to apologize and admit my mistakes. Based on what?" "Don't talk nonsense. You think I don't know the person you're talking about cheating on you with is Secretary Jenny, right? She's innocent, but you insist on saying she's a mistress. You've ruined her reputation by doing this, so you should apologize." I was so mad that I was really about to laugh. This was my good brother. For the sake of work and the money that Tom had promised, he could ignore my grievances and even lie. How could he not know about Tom and the mistress? They go out together every day and do shameless things in the office without hiding. Everyone in the company listened to her and forget about me. The real Mrs. Bill. I had video evidence. Now he wanted me to apologize to that mistress. It was totally unjust. They simply thought that if I divorced Tom, I would live in very misery. I may even ask them for help. But they were wrong again. What they didn't know was that I was the one who brought such a great success to the Bill Group over these years. Tom. Who he thought he was. Just because he was entitled as the chairman of the board, he took himself as the owner of the entire company. Did they think I had no backup plans? After all, they were as stupid as Tom. All of them didn't understand me at all, waiting for me to apologize to the mistress. What are you dreaming about? I didn't agree to apologize to the woman. The whole family was anxious. Karen said in a sarcastic tone, "Oh, there are so many people in this family and the house is too small to hold us all. Honey, you have to work hard and earn more money. We still have to support Nancy and her daughter." While eating, my mother shed tears that couldn't be more fake. She put all the meat into the bowl of her eldest grandson, Max, Karen's son. Finally, I picked up some vegetables for Annie. "Annie, I'm so sorry. Grandma is not capable to make money, so I can't afford good food. You deal with it." After dinner, Mother gave all the peeled apple flesh to Max. Hand Annie a fuss slices of apple skin. Annie looked at me pitifully. "Mom, I want to eat apples too." I picked up my phone and transferred $20,000 to my mother. "Mom, we're only staying here for a few days. I'll move out once I find a house. During this time, please help me look after Annie. Please accept the money. If it's not enough, I'll transfer more to you later." She looked at the money transferred into her account and then reluctantly gave Annie a small apple. I was not poor. I was super rich instead. But during this period of time, I had to deal with issues with the bill group and find a house. So I couldn't be distracted to take good care of Annie. That's why I thought about going back to my mother's house. In here, at least, Annie was safe and I could devote myself to my own. I had originally planned to give my mother and the others a large sum of money. But when I came back, no one welcomed me and no one said a word of comfort to me. So I regretted. I won't give my money to these ungrateful people. $20,000 for a few days. I thought it was enough. During the day, I went out to get my work done and connect with my other relationships. I registered a new company. I wanted to seize all business of the bill group to my new company. Little by little, I was confident and have already achieved more than a half. At noon, when I had a little free time, I turned on the surveillance camera at home. I had installed that before just to check on my old parents, occasionally fearing that something might happen to them. But what I saw today made me furious. In the surveillance video, Max was hit Annie on the head with a toy. He kept talking while smashing. "Get lost. This is my home, not yours. Why do you live here?" 3-year-old Annie couldn't speak much. She just covered her head and cried as going to look for her grandmother. Unexpectedly, instead of comforting her, my mother pushed her to the ground. "Cry, cry, cry. Why are you crying? You are a money loser from another family. You are here in my house, but you dare to cry?" After snatching my grandson's toys, Max became even more arrogant. After seeing my mother's attitude, he picked up other toys and kept hitting Annie on the head. I was furious. I spoke loudly to the monitor. "Max, if you dare to hurt Annie again, I will throw you out immediately." When Max heard me talking on the surveillance camera, he was not afraid at all. Instead, he felt justified. "My mom said this is my house and she's going to throw you out. You are just a piece of trash that no one wants." After he said that, he kicked Annie hard in the stomach. Annie cried loudly in grievance. My heart ached. I could bear the injustice because they were my family after all. But not Annie. She was my daughter and she had no obligations to bear that family. I got home quickly. I saw Annie being left at the door alone and crying loudly. It was so dangerous. She was only 3 years old. What if she got kidnapped by bad people? They were so stone-heart that they even did such thing to a kid. I was so angry that my whole body was shaking. But at this time, Karen over. She's being hypocritical. "Nancy, I'm not blaming you, but you're a divorced woman with a kid. How can you find another man? Now Tom has said that he can forgive you. As long as you apologize, you should give in. I have already notified Tom, and he will come to pick you and your daughter up soon." She slammed the door and 2 minutes later opened it again and threw all 3 of our suitcases out. She also said, "I'm doing this for your own good." For my own good? Before I could react, Tom's car stopped in front of me. He sat in the driver's seat, stuck his head out and looked at me in disgrace with pride. "How is it, Nancy Harbour? Can you still live without me?" "Forget it. Since we have been married for so many years, I can just go and apologize to Jenny. And I'm still willing to take you back." I glared at him. This piece of trash who I caught with his mistress in our bed. He even shamelessly protected the mistress. "It's because you're not gentle and virtuous." So Jenny came to help me release. She is an innocent girl who is kind enough to help me. Don't hold on to her. If I go after whores, aren't you afraid that I'll be infected by STD? Now that we had been divorced, he still insisted on asking me to apologize. Fuck off. I picked up a brick from the roadside and threw it at his luxury car, waiting for my apology. He could be lucky enough if I didn't beat him to death. Seeing his beloved car being smashed, he got out in a hurry, pointing at me and cursing at me angrily. "This is what you are. Not gentle at all. That's why I'm looking for other girl. I'm giving you one last chance now. I'm doing this for Annie's sake. I don't want Annie to suffer with you. Don't be so stupid. I want the chance. Give me a month at most and I will bankrupt him. He thought that because I still held expectations on him. So when we divorced, I didn't request all his property and didn't fall out with him in front of everyone in the company. Just wait and see. I picked up a brick, but this time I didn't smash the car because I smashed him directly. I hit his neatly combed head with a brick. Immediately, he covered his bleeding head and started screaming. Nancy, you deserve it. You deserve that even your own family dislikes you. You are a shrew. Yes, he is right. I am a shrew. I hit him in the head and he ran faster than anything else. I looked at the gate of the villa in front of me, thinking about all the subsidies and contributions I had made to the family over the years. Sadness slowly filled my entire heart. It was such a cold day, but they just kicked me and my daughter out of the house without showing any mercy. Since they didn't consider me as a family member, there was no need to leave them this house. I silently took out my cell phone and made a call a few minutes later. After the divorce, I returned to the place I once called home, dragging along my daughter Annie and several large boxes. It was supposed to be a safe place, a temporary haven, until I found a new home and rebuilt our lives. My mother's villa was big enough, more than enough, for us to stay for a few days. But the moment Karen, my sister-in-law, opened the door, I knew I was not welcome. She greeted me with an overly sweet smile that instantly curdled. Nancy, you're back. Why didn't you tell me earlier? I could have gone grocery shopping. Her eyes drifted toward the luggage behind me, and her face dropped like a curtain. Why do you have so many boxes? I forced a calm tone. Karen, I'm just staying for a few days. Tom and I are divorced. I need time to find a place for Annie and me. Her eyes widened in faux shock. You're divorced? And now you want to move back? Yes, just for a few days, I repeated. She didn't respond. No welcome, no help, no warmth. Just a scoff as she disappeared back into her room. I moved our things to the guest room, the one I used to sleep in as a child, and sat Annie down on the small sofa. She clung to my arm, silent and confused. I stroked her hair, trying to mask the ache in my chest. Then I heard the front door open. My mother had returned. She rushed in, her face filled with anxiety, clearly summoned by Karen. I stood and tried to explain before she jumped to conclusions, but she didn't give me the chance. Nancy, are you really divorced from Tom? She asked breathlessly. Yes, Mom. Before I could finish, she spun around the room, wringing her hands, clearly panicking. How could you do this? Divorce? Tom is such a capable man. He's rich. He gave you everything. I blinked, stunned. Mom, don't you even want to know why I divorced him? She froze for a second. Why? Tears welled in my eyes, uninvited but unstoppable. I thought about all the pain, all the betrayal, all the nights I sat alone while Tom laughed with another woman. He cheated on me, I whispered. He used our money to take care of a mistress. Her face barely twitched. Her next words felt like a punch to the throat. That's it? Just a mistress? Nancy, that's so common these days. Even poor men have affairs, let alone a successful man like Tom. You're being too stubborn. Just turn a blind eye and move on. Apologize to him. Remarry. Fix this. I stared at her, my heart shattering in ways I hadn't expected. My mother, the woman who raised me, the one person I thought might at least hold my hand through this. She didn't even comfort me. That night, I didn't speak another word. I tucked Annie into bed and curled beside her, too drained to even cry. Sleep came like an escape, a thin one. I woke to the sound of murmured voices. It was late, and Annie was still asleep beside me, shivering lightly without a blanket. I wrapped her gently, kissed her forehead, and stepped out quietly, planning to find something to eat in the kitchen. But then I heard them, Karen, my brother Tim, and my mother, whispering in the living room. She really divorced Tom? Karen asked. Yes, Tim said. I talked to Tom. He said Nancy overreacted, that he was just playing around. She made a fuss, insisted on a divorce. Same as always, never backs down. She needs to learn her place, my mother added. Tim chuckled. Tom said if we convince her to apologize and go back, he'll give me a promotion at Bill Group. He'll even give us money. Karen sounded delighted. Really? Wow, that Tom is so generous. Nancy doesn't know how lucky she is. My breath caught in my throat. My own family, bargaining my misery for promotions and money. I stepped into the living room and sat down in front of them with a forced smile. So, everyone's here. What were we talking about? They jumped in shock. Tim tried to recover first. Tom called. He's willing to forgive you, Nancy. If you admit your mistake and apologize to Jenny. To Jenny? I interrupted. The secretary, Karen added. She's not what you think. I almost laughed. Not what I think? You mean the woman I caught in our bed? The one Tom bought a condo for, using my money? My brother shook his head. Stop exaggerating. That woman is innocent. You're just making it worse. I stood slowly. So that's it. None of you care what he did to me. You just care about what he can give you. None of them denied it. Dinner was awkward. My mother, playing the victim, cried about poverty and the strain I'd caused on the household. She piled the meat into Max's bowl, Karen's son, and gave Annie nothing but rice. Later, she peeled apples for dessert. She handed the juicy pieces to Max and gave Annie a plate of skins. Annie tugged my sleeve. "Mommy, can I have some apple too?" My stomach turned. I took out my phone and transferred $20,000 directly into my mother's account. "Here, for Annie's food. We're only here for a few days. Let me know if it's not enough." Only then did she begrudgingly give Annie one slice. That night, I stared at the ceiling while Annie slept. They thought I was broke, that I had no power, no plan. They didn't know I was the reason Bill Group thrived, that I had already opened a new company in secret, that I was already stealing clients from Tom one by one, quietly, strategically. But even with all that strength, nothing prepared me for what I saw the next day on the surveillance camera. During my lunch break, I opened the home surveillance app on my phone, something I rarely did, but a strange feeling tugged at my gut. I had installed the cameras long ago to keep an eye on my aging parents. I never imagined I'd one day be watching them to protect my child. What I saw made my vision blur with fury. Max was in the living room, holding a hard plastic toy, yelling at Annie. "Get out! This is my house! Why are you here?" He raised the toy and hit her on the head. Once. Twice. My 3-year-old daughter cried out in pain, staggering back, her small hands covering her head. She ran to my mother, her grandmother, seeking comfort. But instead of soothing her, my mother shoved her hard, making her fall. "Cry! Go ahead! Cry again! Useless little girl! You don't belong here!" I gasped. My pulse thundered in my ears. I wanted to jump through the screen. And then Max, emboldened, grabbed another toy and began hitting Annie again. I activated the speaker. My voice boomed through the living room. "Max! If you hit Annie one more time, I will come home right now and throw you out myself." He paused, looked straight into the camera, and with the cruel confidence of a child taught by monsters said, "My mom said this is our house. You're just trash. No one wants you here." Then he kicked Annie in the stomach. That was it. I ran out of the office like a woman possessed. When I got home, the scene shattered what was left of my tolerance. Annie was outside, alone, crying. The front door was locked. She could have been kidnapped, hit by a car, anything. My hands shook as I scooped her into my arms. She was trembling and sobbing against my chest. The front door creaked open. Karen stood there, arms crossed, expression smug. "Nancy," she said, feigning concern. "I'm not blaming you, but let's face it, you're a divorced woman with a kid. Do you really think you'll find another man?" I stared at her, too stunned to speak. She continued, "Tom is willing to forgive you. All you need to do is apologize. I already called him. He's on his way to pick you up." Then she slammed the door in my face. 2 minutes later, she opened it again, just to throw our suitcases out onto the pavement. "I'm doing this for your own good," she said with mock kindness. I didn't have time to reply, because at that exact moment, a sleek black car pulled up, and Tom stepped out. Tom emerged from the car with that smug look he always wore when he thought he held power over me. He leaned against the door, looking me up and down like I was something pathetic he scraped off his shoes. "How's it going, Nancy Harper?" he sneered. "Living without me isn't as easy as you thought, huh?" I didn't move. "Forget it," he sighed dramatically. "Since we've been married for years, I'll be the bigger person. Apologize to Jenny and I'll take you back." My jaw tightened. "You want me to apologize to the woman you cheated on me with?" I asked slowly. "She's not what you think," he said. "She's gentle, kind. She was just helping me release stress, because you were too cold, too harsh. She's not a mistress. She's innocent." The rage inside me boiled over. "Innocent?" I said with a cold smile. "You brought her into our home, into our bed. And you want me to say sorry?" Tom shrugged. "You should be grateful. I'm giving you one more chance, for Annie's sake." I walked to the sidewalk, picked up a loose brick, turned to him. "Waiting for an apology?" I asked sweetly. Then I smashed the brick onto the hood of his luxury car. Tom roared in anger and jumped out of the car. "You crazy bitch! You're just proving why I needed someone else." "I divorced you!" I shouted. "Don't you dare twist the story. You're a liar, a coward, and a disgrace." His hand clenched into a fist, but I didn't flinch. I raised the brick again. "You think I can't live without you?" I spat. "You think I'll come crawling back? You think I'm weak because my family threw me out?" I lowered my voice, cold and calm. "Give me a month, Tom. I will bankrupt you." He blinked, just a flicker of uncertainty in his eyes. I dropped the brick and turned to the house behind me. That villa, that cold tomb where I had invested years of love, money, and patience. They had treated me and my daughter like burdens, like trash. They had gambled me away for favors and promotions, and they didn't deserve a single second more of my energy. I pulled out my phone, dialed a number, and spoke one sentence into the line. Do it. And I walked away. 3 days later, I heard a knock at my door. Not from Karen, not from my mother, not from Tim. It was my father. He looked older than I remembered, paler, smaller, a man who had rarely spoken up through my life, and who had certainly stayed silent when I was being humiliated and kicked out of his house. But now, here he was, holding his hat in both hands like a guilty child. Nancy, he said quietly, I'm not here to defend anyone. He sighed. I saw the video of Annie and what they did to her. My throat tightened. He paused. She's just a little girl, and I stood by and let them treat her like that. I said nothing. My silence was heavier than any words. He looked at me, truly looked at me for the first time in years. I'm sorry, he said. A tear slid down his cheek. If you ever need help, anything at all, I'm here. I should have spoken up sooner. You didn't deserve what happened to you. It was too late for apologies, but something in his voice, his eyes, told me it was real. And for the first time, I didn't push it away. I nodded, not to forgive, but to acknowledge. Then I gently closed the door and allowed myself to cry, not out of weakness, but out of release. On Monday morning, the headlines exploded. Bill Group under investigation. CEO accused of embezzlement, sexual misconduct. Insider whistleblower exposes corporate fraud. Tom was arrested in his mansion in nothing but silk pajamas, screaming like a fallen emperor. Jenny was stopped at the airport trying to flee the country, drenched in fake tears and crocodile apologies. The footage of them in bed, the suspicious fund transfers, the internal messages, I had collected it all for years. I was the architect of their destruction. And now I released it. Meanwhile, in my new office, my assistant handed me a folder with a proud smile. Our last acquisition is finalized. The final client Bill Group had, he's ours now. My company was now the biggest in the region. Tom's empire, built on greed, arrogance, and the labor of a woman he discarded, crumbled in less than 30 days. Karen called me crying. Tim sent desperate voice notes. Even my mother left a message asking if I would please stop. But I didn't answer. Because I didn't need revenge anymore. I had justice. 2 weeks later, Annie and I moved into a cozy new apartment. Not a mansion, not a villa, but it was warm, peaceful, ours. I enrolled her in a new preschool where no one called her names. No one hit her, no one shoved her or blamed her for being born to a strong mother. We decorated the living room ourselves, painted the walls with soft colors and drawings. We danced in our pajamas, baked cookies, sang off-key in the kitchen. She laughed more, and I healed. Sometimes I would receive a letter from my family, handwritten apologies, offers to talk things out. Even Tim once begged me to help him get his job back. I never replied, because family isn't built by blood. It's built by love, respect, and protection, and they had failed all three. I wasn't a bitter woman. I just stopped watering dead plants. One Sunday morning, I dressed Annie in her pink coat and took her on a drive. We pulled up across the street from the old villa. It looked different now, wilted, hollow. The garden was overgrown, the walls stained by time. A crooked for sale sign was nailed to the gate. I didn't go inside. I just stared at it. The place that once held my loyalty, my silence, my sacrifices. The place where I paid the bills but was treated like a beggar. The place where my daughter was hit, pushed, humiliated. I pulled out my phone, opened my banking app, confirmed the final transaction. I had just bought the property. And then I transferred ownership to Annie. Not because I wanted her to live there, but because they never would again. I turned to Annie and smiled. This house used to belong to people who didn't love us, I said softly. Now it belongs to someone who will grow up knowing her worth. She looked up at me, holding my hand. Me? I nodded. Yes, baby. You. As we walked away, the sun finally broke through the clouds, and for the first time in a long, long time, I felt truly free.